They speak fast. You feel the pressure. The room's energy rises, and everything inside you says say something, but you don't. And that's when everything shifts. Because the one who speaks first usually isn't the one in control. It's the one who couldn't handle the tension, the one who needed relief, more than position, but the one who waits, who holds the pause, who lets silence stretch until it becomes heavy. They bend the room without a word. We were taught that confidence sounds loud, that leadership speaks first, that strength rushes in. But in truth, the strongest presence in any room often says nothing at first. Silence isn't absence. It's structure. It doesn't say, I don't know. It says, I don't need to prove that I do. You don't rise by reacting. You rise by withholding, by listening without leaking, by staying still when others scramble for position. Because in a world addicted to noise, nothing is more disruptive than someone who can sit with power and say nothing. Let's begin. Let's dismantle the instinct to speak, just to be seen, and unlock the quiet that commands before a single word is spoken. You walk into a room. The air feels charged. A question gets tossed in. No one answers. Then, someone speaks. Quickly, too quickly, and just like that, the rhythm of the entire room shifts to match them. But did they lead, or did they just react first? Most people don't speak to add value. They speak to reduce tension, to fill space, to prove they belong. They don't pause because silence feels like judgment. They rush because stillness feels like threat. But every time you speak out of pressure, you hand over your center. Because the first voice in the room is often the most exposed. Not the clearest, not the strongest, just the one who couldn't sit still. And the more you speak from discomfort, the more you show the room, I need you to see me thinking. But power doesn't need to be seen thinking. It waits. It listens. It lets the others flinch first. Someone asks a vague question in a meeting. You know the answer, but you don't say it yet. You wait. Let others jump in. Let the nervous energy reveal itself. And when you do speak, you don't compete. You land. Not because your voice was loud, but because your timing was. This is the beginning of strategic quiet. Not just withholding words, but controlling when your voice becomes part of the frame. Let's now move deeper into what happens when your silence isn't emptiness, but inner structure, a way to stay grounded while everyone else reaches for noise. Silence is not hesitation, it's control. Most people speak before they've landed on clarity because they're not grounded. They're reacting from friction, not responding from structure. But inner silence changes that. You don't pause because you're lost. You pause because you're centered. You're not quiet because you're uncertain. You're quiet because you're aligning internally before releasing anything externally. This is the difference between thinking to reply and thinking to anchor. A friend vents emotionally. Most people jump in to comfort, to fix, to smooth things over. You don't. You sit still. You breathe. You say nothing. And within seconds, they begin calming themselves down. Not because you said the right thing, but because you didn't pollute the space with emotional feedback. Your silence created gravity, and that gravity made them adjust. This is tactical grounding, the ability to stay so still that others recalibrate without ever being told to. You don't compete for clarity. You become the condition where clarity happens. Let's now move into the next level of this discipline. Not just stillness for yourself, but silence as a form of disruption, a way to tilt the balance of power in any conversation without saying a word. Silence makes people nervous. not because it's empty, but because it's undefined, and the human mind hates what it can't define. In power dynamics, this is where the shift happens. Most people rush to speak first, to anchor the rhythm, to steer the tone, but the one who withholds response doesn't just slow the tempo, they disrupt the pattern. When someone expects your reply and gets silence, their brain scrambles to fill the gap, and that gap becomes leverage. They question their tone, their phrasing, their position, and suddenly, you're no longer responding. They are. In negotiation, you don't rush to counteroffer. You pose, you lean back, you give nothing. And in that pause, the offer improves itself, not because you fought, but because you created space where their frame couldn't hold without your participation. The first to speak concedes pacing. The last to move controls it. And control isn't volume, it's timing. This is why stillness isn't passive, it's disruptive. Let them chase the noise. You sit inside the signal. Let's now move into the next dimension of power, when you don't just use silence to delay, but to hide your strategy completely, not retreat opacity. We step now into the science of being unreadable. The moment they can read you, they can reach you. And the moment they can reach you, they start reshaping you. Most people give it all away in seconds. Their tone, their urgency, their pace of breath, their mental state becomes public before they even finish the first sentence. But you pose, you slow, you break rhythm, and in doing so, you become unreadable. And unreadable isn't confusing, it's commanding. They don't know if you're calm or calculating. They don't know if you're holding back or holding judgment. They don't know if your silence is patience or dominance, and that uncertainty becomes power, because the human brain seeks patterns, and when it can't find one, it submits. You don't need to be intimidating. You just need to be opaque, hard to mirror, hard to predict, hard to decode. And suddenly, they stop testing you. They stop pushing. They recalibrate, because your frame no longer responds to probing. It absorbs nothing. It reacts to nothing. It gives back nothing that wasn't earned. That is psychological insulation. And once you install it, you become a space no one knows how to handle. Let's now move to what happens when silence does more than protect you. It reflects them, not because you revealed anything, but because they did. We now step into the mirror. Silence isn't empty. It's a mirror. And the moment you stop giving signals, people stop reacting to you and start reacting to themselves. They fill the gaps with over-explanation. They clarify things you never questioned. They reveal insecurity because your stillness denied them a script. Most people don't fear rejection. They fear being unseen. And when you don't reflect back what they want, they try harder. And in trying harder, they expose the very part they were trying to protect. You don't challenge them. You just don't echo. And that silence becomes pressure. Not because it's aggressive, but because it doesn't offer relief. Someone sends you an emotionally charged message. You don't reply. Minutes pass. Hours. Then comes the second message. Sorry if that was too much. I didn't mean it like that. No confrontation. No argument. Just a mirror. You said nothing, but they revealed everything. That's the power of restrained presence. You become a space where people show themselves, not because you asked, but because your stillness left nowhere else for their energy to land. Let's now refine that even further. Not just how others react, but how you maintain composure without leaking emotion, even under pressure. This next layer isn't silence by absence. It's silence as emotional mastery. You don't speak because you need to fix the moment. You don't react because you need to soothe the tension. You hold, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. Clarity doesn't panic. It waits. It breathes. It speaks only when the weight of the moment demands a voice. Most people talk too soon. They say, "It's okay," before checking if it is. They forgive too fast, validate too quickly, agree too eagerly. Not because it's honest, but because silence feels inhuman. But emotional maturity isn't about saying the right thing. It's about knowing when saying nothing is the stronger move. Someone apologizes. You don't rush to make them feel better. You don't say, "It's fine." You hold. You look at them. And when it's time, you say, "I heard you." That's not distance. That's direction. You don't reward behavior with automatic comfort. You don't trade your emotional boundary for social smoothness. Because self-containment isn't a lack of emotion. It's a refusal to be emotionally managed by the room. Let's take this into real-world space, away from one-on-one tension, into group settings, where the loudest voice usually wins, unless the quiet one is strategic. In every group, there's always someone talking the most, but rarely are they the one setting the tone. Volume isn't influence, attention isn't authority, and being heard is not the same as being followed. Strategic, quiet changes that. You don't speak to participate. You speak to pivot. You don't add noise to be noticed. You let silence raise the value of every word you do choose. Because when you speak less, every sentence becomes a signal. In a crowded conversation, you observe, you listen, you let others race for validation. And when the moment is right, you say one line, one sentence, clear, weighted, final, and the room adjusts. Not because you said something shocking, but because you didn't say everything. You gave them space to guess, to lean in, to wonder what else you're not saying. That's psychological gravity. They speak to be heard. You speak to anchor. Let's now turn this into action. Let's compress everything you've just learned into one behavioral discipline. One test of silence, timing, and self-command. You don't need to talk louder. You just need to let the silence do what they can't stop feeling. We close with the challenge. For the next 48 hours, don't rush to speak. Don't interrupt silence. Don't react just because the moment feels heavy. Let tension hang. Let others over-explain. Let people wonder what you're thinking while you remain still. Every time someone looks for a reaction, choose stillness. Every time you're tempted to fill space, choose breath. Every time a thought rises quickly, delay it until it's sharp enough to land once. Speak 30% less. Wait 3 seconds longer before replying. When the moment tugs at your emotions, observe it instead of obeying it. Silence isn't passivity. It's placement. It's choosing when to show your power and when to let them feel the absence of it. Comment, "I don't speak to be heard. I speak to shift the frame." Say it if you're done reacting. If you're done explaining. If you're done offering clarity before you're ready to own it. Let your quiet lead. Let your stillness speak. And let every word you hold become heavier than everything they say.